Hello, my fellow readers. This is I, Dark Symphony 777, with another fan fiction review. As always, a link to the story will be in the description below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click on that bell for notifications, and leave a comment in the comment section below on your thoughts of the story and any future fan fictions you want me to read or review. And finally, this is my opinion. My opinion is not indicative of everyone in the world, so please respect that. So, I will be reviewing Tourmaline. Where is that story? I just completely forgot who wrote it. It is written by Phantom Rose 96. It is Steven Universe fanfiction. I only had to pull up the file because I just completely forgot who the author was. And this is it is something. It's something. Like let's just get the plot over with. So the plot is basically Tourmaline is beaten within an inch of her life by the crystal gems. Like I said, I'm not too familiar with Steven Universe, so bear with me. But Peridot manages to destabilize them. She uses something called a destabilizer. Turns them into little gems and stuff like that. And then Steven gets worried. He goes to the kindergarten, whatever that is, and finds her and finds all the rocks there. So I was like, okay, we're gonna keep them safe. And so he brings them back home. He puts Peridot into Peridot's gem into a little dog cage, and she's cracked. Her gem is cracked. Apparently that's a big deal in Steven Universe thing. And Peridot manages to wake up first, but she's falling apart. So Steven, being the kind-hearted guy he is, wants to go help her. However, when the other gems come out, they try to attack her, and Steven panics. He brings her into his mom's room, and then decides to fuse with her into Tourmaline, I guess. All with the purpose of, trying to keep Peridot alive as long as he can, so he can try and convince her to, change her mind and stuff like that. And then they start talking. Everyone's getting involved. There's also references to fan fiction. Some in-universe show called Under the Knife, which is probably a Nip Tuck reference, if anything. And then the homeworld gets involved with this person named Captain Cinnabar. So Cinnabar comes down, talks to them and stuff like that. And she goes mad because she's apparently a big deal in this universe, and she's just kind of in charge of some random junk. And the crystal gems, along with Tourmaline, manage to stop her, and she just wants to get out of there. So Peridot manages to, Tourmaline separates. Peridot goes to help them out. But Steven, and one last thing of kindness, gives, hides the tears and her shards and everything to fix her up. And Peridot goes back to Homeworld to go into the refinery. She finds the notes and the water and the gems and stuff like that to heal her. And then Peridot goes, decides realizes that everything's kind of different now that she spent so long on Earth, and spending time with Steven kind of helped her out. I'm pretty much just summarizing the plot because the plot is it's half and half. On one hand, some of the plot is actually really well written, but on the other hand, the plot is just a whole bunch of hooey that just the author just made it up as they went along. So that is the plot. And wow. First off, it's a lot of the problems are actually the opposite of the last Steven Universe fanfiction I reviewed. Don't even bother. For instance, the genre. That story, it's genre and angst, but it should have been just not drama, hurt and comfort and angst. But that one should have just been hurt and comfort. This one was hurt and comfort, but should have been hurt and comfort and angst. It's just really weird. And that kind of stretches throughout the entire story. Literally, every problem I have with the story is a problem I didn't have with Don't Even Bother, and vice versa. Let's get started. The characters. And don't even bother. The main problem I had was the main characters were not exactly developed, but but the side characters were. This is kind of the opposite, where we have the main characters of the Crystal Gems, Steven and Peridot, and I guess Tourmaline. And Tourmaline is kind of interesting. She's basically an empath. She basically uses interpretation and emotions to kind of figure out the future. It's actually kind of interesting. It's like clairvoyance in a way, but through emotion and not just like psychic understanding of the world. And the Crystal Gems are all right. They're not outstanding, but they're all right. Literally every other character is just undeveloped. Like, there's a thing with Steven and Connie doing fan fiction, and it gets it's supposed to be like a homely thing, but it comes off as very hokey. And Greg is just there. He just shows up like once or twice, like, I'm here, I'm gone. Commander Cinnabar is really underutilized. I think the author wanted to do something with her, but kind of wrote herself into a corner with it. And finally, Howlite, which is Cinnabar's like little tiny helper. Cinnabar's like this high, and Howlite's like this high. I never even heard of Cinnabar or Howlite. Apparently, they're like gems. Cinnabar's like a poisonous gem sort of thing. And Howlite's character is she's basically just a yes man and like, hey, yes. And then like part way when the ship crashes, her gem actually cracks, and she's like trying to figure out how to say here, my gem cracked, and she's trying to talk to herself and try and pump herself up to like say I need to go to the refinery, but she manages to find the tears that Steven meant to give to Peridot, and she's like, I healed myself up, just do it. I helped you out. You saved my life. I saved yours. To Peridot. In like a little note, Cinnabar is basically this high and mighty person who kind of works under the Yellow Diamond sort of thing, and she's like apparently a big name. Like, this is the problem I have with these characters. It's just they're not developed enough. Because the author tried to do this whole as you know situation but when you're introducing original characters and you do it in this way, it comes off as very bad writing when you don't develop. Well, not only do you not really develop the characters that are kind of going to be important, but also the way you deliver the importance of the characters in a way that you should already know who they are comes off as really oaky, because even in the story, like, none of the only really Pearl knew who Cinnabar was, and even then, it was, again, a very as-you-know situation, where we, the readers, are supposed to automatically know who she is. I didn't know who she was. Who is she? She's basically just, she's in charge of, like, a pile of space that's, like, full of junk. And it's like, but it's delivered in such a way that it's like common knowledge sort of thing. But it's like, there's a way to deliver it in a way that kind of comes off as natural, and then there's this way, which doesn't come off as natural. Wow, way to ruin Cinnabar's appeal. And also Howlite being a yes man, and at the end of the story, Cinnabar's like burned out, and she basically orders Howlite, stop being a yes man. And she goes, yes ma'am. And she sits down and is like, eh. It looks like that's just their story wasn't even finished, and the story kind of ends on like Connie and Steven talking about more Nip Tuck fan fiction. I'm pretty sure Under the Knife is basically just Nip Tuck, just under a different name. I'm guessing. So yeah, but. And also, Steven and Peridot are actually kind of flat. They're more developed than they were in Don't Even Bother, because, Steven is Steven, and they don't try and mope for the sake of mope. Like, throughout the few times we see Steven and Peridot, Steven's just trying to cheer up Peridot, is like, help her out, while Peridot is like destroyed and is actually very depressed and suicidal. So it comes off as a very neat, as a dynamic that's at least pretty well done, especially since Tourmaline, for the most part, is in control. I like Tourmaline. She's basically just apathetic. She's like, okay. It's like, well, I'm empathetic, so I'm empathetic and I'm apathetic. Take your pick, sort of thing. And her character is done pretty decently. Like everything, all the characters are good, not great. They really should have been great. I'll talk about that when I get the pacing. But all the characters are, for what they're worth, they're better written than, overall written than Don't Even Bother. Except for Howlite and Cinnabar, they really should have been worked on like way longer. Grammar, I didn't see any grammar. Let's moving on. Pacing, the pacing is alright. However, I do have a problem with the length of the story. The story is only about 85,000 words, but there was a big problem where, like, Don't Even Bother, I think that was like 150,000. Like, let me actually check. Don't Even Bother fan. Yeah, fan. Here it is. Yeah, it's 128,000 words. So this is actually so that story is actually 40,000 words more than this one. And that story managed to make all those words mean something. The problem with the word count on this story is it's way too short, which is the opposite of Don't Even Bother, where I just realized I said that story made it make every single word count. I goofed. Sorry about that. I foot in mouth. Don't Even Bother needed to be shorter. This story needed to be longer. Like there's not enough room. No, Don't Even Bother, I said, could have been shorter or longer depending on how you went about things. Tourmaline needed to be way longer, like twice, if not 3 times as long, because there is not enough room to explore Tourmaline, the whole concept of Tourmaline with the light screen weapon, Steven and Peridot's character. There was not enough time to develop the relationship between Peridot and the crystal gems. There was not enough. There's not enough words to develop Cinnabar or Howlite or Connie or Greg. Like all the problems that I have with them, minor as they are, just stem from the fact that the story is ridiculously short. Like, I don't even know why the story is so short, despite the fact that it's a story that needs to be longer, especially in the time frame. Granted, the time frame I think is only like a couple days long across the story, which is another thing. Like, why is the story in universe covered from a small time? I get the whole point is the fusion is not going to last forever, so it kind of makes sense in a weird sort of way. But at the same time, it's very counterintuitive of building off the characters when the story, you're not giving the story enough time to breathe and give itself some room to develop the characters and their dynamics with each other. Especially since we're introduced to Cinnabar like near the end of the story. Like, it was over like halfway through the story before we're introduced to Cinnabar and Howlite. And the story is just not long enough to even develop those characters outside of just a beginning. Especially since how the story ended left it on a very cliffhangery sort of thing, with Steven wondering what happened to Peridot. Like, did she read the note? And Peridot seeing like Homeworld for what it is, a very totalitarian, mechanical place, and wanting to do something about it. And Cinnabar and Howlite, like Cinnabar being burned out, and Howlite, trying to talk to Howlite and stuff like that. It honestly reads like the story is not done yet. Like, this is only the first half of a 2-part story. The story not only needs a sequel, but it also needs to be longer, like way, way longer. Like, if I had to choose how long it would be, it'd probably be like close to 200,000 words. That would be another 115 to 120,000 words to work on just developing this world and developing Peridot's character, developing Cinnabar and Howlite and the Crystal Gems and Tourmaline and Steven, like everything Everything from the plot to the characters to the pacing is good, but not great. It's all held back by the fact the story is just not long enough. And sometimes a length of a story can actually hurt a story as well as help it. There are some stories like Misconceptions, the Powerpuff Girls fanfiction I read. That story was way too long for its own good. Like, I even said in that review, it needed to be cut back for like a third. Like, get rid of like 200,000 words because it was just so long, it dragged. But I still recommend that story because the characters and the plot were actually phenomenal. And really the only thing held it back was that pacing was just so bad. So bad. But this story, the problem is, this story is just way too short for what it's trying to accomplish. It is better in some ways to Don't Even Bother. Like, in the pacing, it's better paced. It handles itself in the plot better than Don't Even Bother. The characters are at least all decent except for Cinnabar and Howlite. Even Steven and Paradise are at least have something done with them that at least advances their characters and their character arc, but it all feels incomplete. Like, we're missing huge patches of the character in the story, and it kind of helps the scenario, but at the same time it hurts it more than it helps. So would I recommend it? As it is, no, I can't recommend the story. I will hesitantly not recommend the story because it does have the bare minimum space for what it's trying to do. Like, I can see what the author is trying to accomplish very easily. But at the same time, the fact that the story is so short, it just completely kills any enjoyment I can find in the story because the characters are just half complete. The plot feels half complete. The pacing is fine. It's literally just the fact the story is so short. It just completely just corkscrews everything into oblivion. This story needs less work than Don't Even Bother. Like, Don't Even Bother needs a lot of work to be good. This one doesn't even need a lot of work. It's just make the story longer, flesh out their characters a little more. That's literally it. Introduce us to Cinnabar a little earlier. Like, Cinnabar and Howlite talking through the communications. Like, give us a scene or two, just meeting them, saying like, I wonder give her a scene where we're introduced to her getting the report to contact Paradise. Like, that would be a better introduction to her on communication, just talking and saying, okay, we're taking over for you, we're gonna come pick you up, stuff like that. It's like all the problems with the story, minor as they are, is just they're held back so much because of just the length of the story that it completely just ruins everything. I can't believe I'm saying that. Broster Boy is gonna be kind of sad that I didn't recommend this story, but oh well, I call it as I sees it. Favorite part? I don't really have a favorite part. Well, not actually. My favorite part is actually kind of a weird thing. So, let me explain. You're probably gonna laugh at this, or laugh at me, because it's just so weird and embarrassing. So, throughout the story, I kept picturing the crystal gems in my mind and Tourmaline and having them turn into Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I actually could. There were at the times where I actually had to stop reading it because of that happening and actually laughing myself because I'm just, my mind just kept going to Yu-Gi-Oh for some reason. and it's like, okay, the image is gone from my mind. Let's get back to reading. You're probably wondering, wait, why are you picturing Yu-Gi-Oh cards? Well, there is an actual archetype in Yu-Gi-Oh called the Gem Knights, which are basically like rock or thunder or pyro, that are all based on actual gems like garnet or pearl or amethyst or tourmaline. Like those four, those are all actual cards in the Yu-Gi-Oh game. Pearl is an Xyz monster, garnet is a normal monster, tourmaline is a normal monster too, and amethyst is a fusion. And I just kept like seeing these different girls turn into walking suits of masculine armor was actually kind of hilarious, just image in my mind that wouldn't stop going away. Like, I know it's kind of a weird like favorite part, but I calls it as I sees it. Oh, that's just... Oh, and by the way, the Gem Knight's main gimmick, fusion, just like these gem warriors. How about that? Oh, that's so sad. Oh, oh. Like even garnet is like technically an actual term used in Yu-Gi-Oh. Like that's how well known the Gem Knight archetype was. And even when Steven Universe was introduced, and they introduced the Crystal Gem and what they do, and the fact that they fuse, cue everyone deciding to just do like a Yu-Gi-Oh! Steven Universe cross-ups. Like, go online, just type in Gem Knight, make sure you put a hyphen, and then put in Steven Universe. You'll see like a whole bunch of fan art of like the actual Steven, like them designing the Steven Universe characters in like the poses of the Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Like Pearl is like trying to figure herself up. Like picture Pearl, the skinny little thing with the pointy nose, like with her arms crossed, and she's like has a stern face and she's like looking down at you while she's like flying down from heaven, sort of thing. It's ridiculous as it sounds. Yeah. But I wouldn't recommend this. Anything I would do to fix, I already mentioned that. Just literally make the story longer to give the characters more breathing room to develop and interact with one another. Introduce Commander Cinnabar a little bit earlier, so that way she has, we see her more and more, and kind of get used to her character right from the off, rather than, we get Tourmaline and all of a sudden here comes Cinnabar, stuff like that. And if you're going for a sequel, like based on the epilogue, it very much looks like there's going to be a sequel, which, if there is, then maybe the complaints may fix itself because of how the sequel goes. But as it stands right now, just this story by itself, I cannot recommend it. The fact that my favorite part is just me turning them into Yu-Gi-Oh cards just randomly. Tells you all you need to know. This is a good, not great story, and it just needs some little work. So, that is my review on Tourmaline. This has been Dark Symphony 777, and cut.